Now we are going to make our own template with our own object details for the stitch types. And to do that, we use the Fabric Manager. So on the Alpha toolbar, if you remember that's the top one, look across it until you find Setup. Click on Setup and Manage Fabrics. We click on that, and I want pure cotton because that's what I'm going to alter. And I click on New, and I'm going to call that Bunny. OK. Now my fabric settings dialog box opens. And the first thing you'll see is we've got our fill, weave or embossed. Then our tabs, wide satin, narrow satin, lettering and stabilizer. Well, we're going to begin here. Stitch length. Now, you may not like a long stitch. It really is a matter of personal taste. Trevor Conquergood has said on his webinars that he likes a stitch length of 3 millimeters, which is very close to my preferred stitch length of 2.8 for my underlays. But in a cover stitch, I quite like the effect that the long stitch gives. It gives a nice reflection off the thread, although it does create distortion problems. So you make the decision. Do you want to go with a shorter default stitch length, or do you want to leave it at 4.2? I'm leaving mine at 4.2 millimeters. Stitch spacing. If I am using my industrial embroidery machines, I set it for 0.4. If I'm using my Janome domestic machine, I set it for between 0.43 and 0.45. So I'm setting this for 0.45. My underlay type, I do not want an edge run. I just want the weave, mainly because I do an awful lot of my own underlays. Now, because I've only one layer of underlay, I've only got layer 1. And I want my underlay stitch length to be 2.8. That's 2.8 millimeters. I want my stitch spacing to be 2.5. And I want my stretchiness allowance, I think 3. Okay, that's it for my fills. Now for my wide satin. Now, if you leave the satin fill on the default setting, it is up at 109%. That's jamming a whole pile of thread together, and you're going to get scrappy, untidy satin stitching. I like to thin mine down and increase my underlay densities. So I take mine down to about 98. Again, that is personal taste. My underlay, it all depends on how wide I'm making my satin. If I'm up at my full 6 millimeters, I like edge run and double zigzag, because that gives me plenty of loft. And for my double zigzag layer 1, I like my stitch length to be 2.8. And I like my stitch spacing to be 2.5. And I like my stretchiness allowance to be 0.4. That's 0.4 of a millimeter. Right, now we go to narrow satin. This time, for the narrow satin, the default is 105. I reduce that to 100. I also put in a center run, because if it's narrow satin, it's probably under 2 mils, and your edge run comes in by 0.5 of a millimeter under the edge, and it acts as an anchor. So if you imagine this is your narrow satin band, the confines of the hoop here. Your underlay is the red line. That's your edge run. And that helps to anchor these stitches, because satin stitch is the biggest culprit of fabric distortion there is. It will literally distort that so it ends up like a waspy belt. Fine if you're a Victorian lady, but it doesn't look great in embroidery. Okay, stitch length. It's there for volume, so yeah, I'm going to leave that be. Lettering. Lettering default is exactly on 100, so you can leave that as is. And as lettering is normally narrow, there is only a center run, and you can leave that as it is, but I would increase that to 0.3, and that's your stretchiness allowance. Stabilizer. This is where I get a little bit annoyed. Okay, if you're going to use a topping, use either a heat away film or a water soluble film. The backing, don't use tear away for anything which is heavier than a run line design, because it will do exactly that. It will tear away. If you are embroidering on a really good heavyweight fabric, like canvas weight for a tote bag, you may find you don't even need a stabilizer. If you are embroidering on a satin or a fairly good cotton, but it's got some pull on the bias, use a medium cutaway, and that's about between 1.5 ounces to 2 ounces a square meter. So I always enter medium cutaway. Now, if I was embroidering what in America is known as muslin, but in this country it's called calico, but if I was using what we call muslin, which is a very loose weave cotton, you can see through it, it's got holes in it, I would use a heavyweight cutaway. And the reason I would use that is I need something to pop my stitches into, and I need something to hold those stitches for the lifetime of whatever it is that I am making. Okay, so now I'm going to tell all that okay, and I'm going to close this. I'm going to go back up into setup, choose fabric, and I want, oh, I already had a bunny in there. Which one is which? I've forgotten which one was which. Never mind. Okay. And it's going to make a difference.